The sun barely peeked over Benin City when Isiosa's mom kicked off her morning routine, opening the windows, sweeping the living room, and whispering quiet prayers for her youngest child. She always said being the last-born meant Isiosa had all the perks but also the least discipline. At 19, Isiosa was the one everyone had high hopes for, yet she was the one who listened the least. Growing up with older siblings shaped her in ways that were both good and bad. By the time she hit 13, her brothers and sisters were already off chasing their dreams: education, marriage, work. Her closest sibling, Osesu, was 7 years older, and they hardly shared anything. No clothes, no secrets, not even a real sisterly bond. Osesu was too busy with university while Isiosa was figuring out her teenage years, and by the time Isiosa was ready to connect, Osesu was already married. So, Isiosa kinda grew up feeling alone. Her parents, both teachers, were loving but strict. They believed in structure, responsibility, and a woman's reputation. But Isiosa? She believed in living life on her own terms. She wasn't rude, just stubborn, in that quiet way where she pretended to listen but was really plotting to do the opposite. Stay away from men, her dad would say every time she dressed up a little too nice for a casual outing. Yes, sir, she'd reply, even though she had plans to meet someone. Focus on your future. Look at your sister. She married a good man. Her mom would chime in. Yes, ma, she'd say, scrolling through her phone, replying to messages from the same guy she was told to avoid. Her parents thought she was naive. But Isiosa wasn't naive. She just felt misunderstood. She was young, beautiful, and full of life. Her almond-shaped eyes, smooth brown skin, and slim figure turned heads everywhere she went. She loved the attention. It made her feel powerful, something she never really felt growing up in the shadows of her older siblings. Everyone had expectations for her, but she wanted to carve her own path. That's how she met the two guys who would change everything for her. At first, she didn't see it as danger. She saw it as freedom. Being the last-born meant she was the first in the family to navigate a world bursting with social media, independence, and temptation. Her parents didn't get what it was like to be 19 in the age of instant messaging and quick relationships. And since she was the only one left at home, her parents kept a close eye on her, calling her phone whenever she was late, asking who she was with, questioning her outfits. She hated it. She wanted to breathe. Sometimes, late at night, she'd lie on her bed and daydream about what life would be like if she lived alone, far away from all the rules and lectures. In her mind, adulthood meant one thing: doing whatever she wanted without needing to explain herself. So when different guys started showing interest in her, she didn't feel guilty. She felt grown. She loved the feeling of being wanted, admired, and cared for. Soon, that craving for attention, and her struggle to pick just one guy, put her on a path her parents had tried to steer her away from. But Isiosa didn't know that yet. All she knew was that she was 19, beautiful, and free. And the world in front of her felt vast enough to make her believe every mistake she was about to make wouldn't matter. She had no idea that choices, once made, could reshape destinies. And hers was about to change forever. Isiosa met Tate first. It was a humid Saturday evening at a friend's birthday party. She hadn't even planned to go. Her mom wanted her to stay home and help with cooking, but her friend begged her until she finally gave in. As soon as she stepped into the small but lively yard, her beauty grabbed attention like a magnet. Tate noticed her right away. He wasn't loud or flashy like some of the other guys at the party. He just watched her from across the yard, smiling softly while sipping his drink. There was something mature about his confidence. He didn't rush over. He waited until she was alone, grabbing a soft drink before approaching with a friendly greeting. "Hi, I'm Tate. Haven't seen you around here before." That's how it all started. Simple, calm, and respectful. Tate was 27, running a small but growing business. He wasn't showy, but he had money and stability. He dressed well, spoke well, and carried himself with a relaxed assurance that made people trust him. He had the kind of life Isiosa's parents dreamed of for her: clean, steady, secure. He treated her with a gentleness she wasn't used to. He'd check in on her, send her money when she needed it, and always asked for her consent before making plans. He never pressured her, never raised his voice, never challenged her choices. And somehow, that gentle stability sometimes bored her. A few months after meeting Tate, she crossed paths with Emeka, the complete opposite. She met him at a roadside food joint near her school. She was there to grab spaghetti and fried fish after a long day, and he happened to be at the same table because of the crowd. He cracked a joke about the food being too spicy, and she laughed harder than she expected. Where Tade was calm, Emeka was fire. Where Tade was gentle, Emeka was bold. Where Tade offered comfort, Emeka offered excitement. Isiosa was stuck in a whirlwind between two guys, two worlds, and two totally different versions of herself. On one side, there was Tade. He was exactly the kind of guy her parents would have picked for her, stable, caring, and responsible. Tade had a solid job, a nice car, and a future plan that always included her. He treated her like royalty, sending her money for her hair, data, and anything else she needed, making sure she was always comfortable. With Tade, she felt safe. He represented a secure future, a life free from worries. Then there was Emeka. Emeka lived in a tiny, crowded room and hustled every single day just to get by. No car, no savings, and definitely no fancy clothes. But what he lacked in material stuff, he made up for with charm. He was funny, charismatic, and had this incredible way of making her feel truly alive. When she was with Emeka, she wasn't just some pampered kid. She was a woman, desired, adored, and completely understood. The passion with him was like a fire she couldn't ignore. Logically, it didn't make sense. She was dating two guys at once, and deep down, she knew it was wrong. A little voice whispered that this couldn't last forever. But, come on, emotions don't really care about logic, do they? She spent her weekdays juggling both of them, living in a constant state of emotional whiplash. The weirdest part? Whenever Tade sent her money, she'd feel this strange urge take over. She'd find herself at the market, picking up rice, tomatoes, and meat, then heading straight to Emeka's place to cook for him. It was like she was using the resources from her safe world to feed the passion in her secret one. Her best friend, Ivy, saw the disaster waiting to happen. Essay, this is dangerous, she warned one afternoon. You can't keep two guys like this. One day, it's all going to blow up in your face. But Isiosa just shrugged it off, convinced she had everything under control. Nothing will happen, she'd say. I know what I'm doing. But did she really? Every time she tried to think clearly, she'd justify her actions. She was young, just exploring, and besides, neither of them had caught her, yet. This delicate balancing act became her new normal. She was living two separate lives, one polished and presentable in the daylight, and the other reckless and thrilling in the shadows. And she was getting pretty good at it. Her mornings were a perfect summary of her dilemma. She'd wake up to two good morning messages. The first, from Tade, would be long and caring, asking about her dreams and reminding her to eat breakfast. It made her feel cherished. The second, from Emeka, would be short and playful. Wake up, Jer. I day hungry. It gave her a jolt of excitement. Together, those messages made her feel completely and utterly wanted. But desire is a tricky guide. It can blind you to the consequences creeping closer and closer. Isiosa didn't feel guilty. She felt powerful, in control. On the days Tade sent her money, she'd thank him sweetly, her voice dripping with gratitude. Then, she'd take a chunk of that cash and disappear into the world she kept hidden. She'd throw on some simple shorts and a t-shirt and walk confidently down the dusty path to Emeka's one-room apartment. She didn't try to hide. It was like this part of her life was so separate, it couldn't possibly collide with the other. When she knocked on his door, Emeka's familiar voice would shout from inside, "Hold on, I day come," and he'd open it with that crooked smile she adored. His room was sparse, just a bed, a noisy fan, and a small speaker. But to Isiosa, it was a sanctuary. It was the one place she could be herself, without any expectations. She wasn't the last-born everyone watched over. She was just a girl, cooking for a man she was drawn to, listening to him talk about his day carrying cement bags at a construction site. And he always made her laugh. Ivy tried again to get through to her. "Essay," she said, her voice serious. "You're playing with fire. Tate is serious about you. He talks about marriage. And Emeka, you know he has nothing to offer you right now. You have to choose." Isiosa just tore a leaf into tiny pieces, unable to give a straight answer. "I don't know," she muttered. "I love them differently." Ivy sighed. "But love isn't about being in two places at once, essay." Meanwhile, of the two guys, it was Tade who was falling the hardest. The more time he spent with her, the more convinced he became that she was the one. He started talking about their future together, about marriage, about moving to a better apartment. He was building a future for them, completely unaware that her heart was divided. Every time Isiosa thought about ending things with Emeka, her heart physically resisted. He felt so real, so genuine. His simple, ordinary life was a breath of fresh air. She was caught between two worlds. One represented the stable future her parents had always dreamed of for her. The other represented the wild, untamed freedom her heart craved. She didn't know it yet, but her inability to make a choice was planting the seeds of the biggest storm she would ever face. The story was no longer just about which guy she would choose. It was about the inevitable consequences of wanting them both. Isiosa didn't say a word. If she were being honest with herself, she'd realize she wasn't really making a choice. She was just putting it off. In her mind, she had everything under control. As long as she managed her time perfectly and stayed careful, nothing bad could happen, right? Her worlds felt separate, and she was the only one who could move between them. But the lies were piling up, getting heavier every day. Tate started asking more questions. His voice, once filled with trust, now had a hint of suspicion. "Why didn't you pick up earlier?" he'd ask. "How come you're always busy in the evenings? Who were you talking to when I called just now?" For every question, Isiosa had a quick answer, a new excuse she pulled out of thin air. Her lies became so smooth, so convincing, that sometimes she almost believed them herself. "Oh, sorry, I was sweeping, didn't hear the phone. My phone was charging in the other room. My mom sent me on an errand. I was in class, you know how it is." And Tate believed her. Or at least, he wanted to. Love has a funny way of making you see what you want, even when that little voice in your head is screaming that something's off. Meanwhile, her connection with Emeka was growing deeper. He wasn't the type to shower her with flowery words or grand gestures. His feelings were quiet, but ran deep. Every time she visited him, his eyes lit up in a way that spoke volumes, a silent welcome, a quiet celebration of her presence. Sometimes, he'd hold her hand just a little longer than necessary, his thumb tracing small circles on her skin. Other times, he'd ask about her day, not just as a casual question, but with genuine interest that made her feel truly seen. Late at night, when the world was quiet, he'd turn to her and softly say in that mix of pidgin and English she adored, "I know no weddin' you see for me, but I'm happy say you day my life." Those words felt like a warm blanket on a cold night, wrapping around her heart and making her feel chosen, needed. And that's how the addiction started. She became hooked on the feeling of being important to two different men for two completely different reasons. With Tade, she was the sophisticated, university-educated girlfriend. With Emeka, she was the down-to-earth girl he felt lucky to have. She was living two lives, and she was the star of both. Back at home, the changes in her weren't going unnoticed. A new glow seemed to radiate from her, an extra spring in her step. Her mom, with her keen maternal instinct, picked up on it right away. "Essay, are you seeing somebody?" she asked one evening, her eyes searching Isiosa's face for the truth. For a split second, Isiosa froze. The question hit too close to home, but she quickly recovered, putting on her most innocent smile. "No, Mummy. I'm just happy," she lied, the word feeling strange on her tongue. Her dad, a man of few words who rarely got involved in such matters, simply watched her from his chair. He didn't say anything directly to her, but later that night, she overheard him talking to her mom. His voice was low and heavy. "She thinks she is wise," he said. "But life has a way of teaching those who refuse to listen." Isiosa didn't hear that conversation, and even if she had, she probably wouldn't have listened. She was floating on a cloud of her own making, convinced she was untouchable. Consequences? Fate? Guilt? Those were for other people, for careless people. As long as she stayed careful, her two worlds would never collide. But secrets aren't like seeds. You can't bury them in the ground and expect them to stay quiet forever. No, secrets are more like stubborn weeds. They grow in the dark, spreading their roots and tangling everything beneath the surface. They wait patiently, silently, for the right season to break through the soil and expose everything. Isiosa didn't know it yet, but the quiet storm she had created was slowly gathering strength on the horizon. And when it finally broke, nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Then December arrived, bringing the familiar magic of the festive season. The air turned crisp with the Harmattan breeze, and dry, golden leaves rustled along the streets. You could hear children rehearsing their Christmas carols, their cheerful voices carried on the wind. Neighbors who had been away in the big cities all year started returning, their cars packed to the roof with luggage and gifts. Isiosa had been looking forward to the holidays, but for entirely different reasons than her parents. For them, Christmas was all about family, tradition, and faith. For her, it was a major inconvenience. Her parents had been talking about their trip to the village for weeks. It was an annual ritual. Every December, they traveled back to their hometown in Edo State for family reunions and end-of-year prayer meetings. For as long as Isiosa could remember, she had been dragged along on these trips. Now that her older siblings were grown and married with their own families, she was the last one left to endure the annual pilgrimage. She complained, of course. She tried every excuse she could think of. "Mummy, why must I go this year? I have things to do here in the city." Her mother's face hardened into a frown. "Which things?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "Tate." Isiosa quickly looked away, avoiding her mother's gaze. "No, it's not about him. I don't want to go." But the argument was cut short by her father's booming voice from the living room. "You're going." That was it. 2 words, and the matter was closed. There was no arguing with that tone. On the morning of the trip, Isiosa moved around the house like she was wading through thick mud. She packed her bags at a snail's pace, hoping to delay the inevitable. Her mother kept bustling around her, urging her to move faster, complaining that her father hated traveling late. None of S.A.'s siblings were coming. They all had their own families to spend the holidays with. So once again, it was just her, her parents, and the long road ahead. She'd never admit it out loud, but a part of her already missed both Tade and Emeka. They had both called her the night before, each completely unaware of the other's existence in her life. Tade's voice was warm and concerned. "Please travel safely, okay? Don't forget to send me pictures when you get there." Emeka's tone was more playful, but just as affectionate. "Call me when you land for village. I go miss you small." She giggled at both messages, her heart swelling with that familiar feeling of being important, of being chosen. But now, as she squeezed into the back seat of her father's car, surrounded by bags of rice, groundnut oil, and Christmas clothes, that feeling was replaced by irritation. The journey felt endless. The roads were dusty and bumpy, shaking the car relentlessly. There were countless police checkpoints where her father had to argue and bargain. The traffic in every small town they passed through was maddening. All the while, her mother sat in the front seat, praying loudly for journey mercies. Her father gripped the steering wheel, muttering complaints about the bad roads and reckless drivers. And Isiosa just stared at her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen, desperately waiting for the network bars to reappear so she could reply to her messages. The city, and the 2 lives she had built there, felt a million miles away. The village hit her with a wave of noise. Kids were shouting, aunties were wrapping her in tight hugs, uncles were calling her big girl, and neighbors were gossiping away. The family compound was already bursting with relatives who had come early. Everyone fussed over her. She was the last born, the city girl, the beautiful daughter of teacher Asafo. She managed a polite smile through it all, even when she really didn't feel like it. But the nights in the village? They were the absolute worst. The silence was deafening. The darkness was thick, only broken by the distant hum of a generator. It made her feel so incredibly lonely. She lay on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling while her parents slept peacefully in the next room. There was nothing to distract her here. No city lights painting the sky, no friends to call, nowhere to go. And worst of all, no Tade, no Emeka. Her mind couldn't escape them. It wandered to them constantly. She found herself scrolling through old chat messages, staring at their pictures saved on her phone. Sometimes, when the night breeze felt a little too cold, she'd hug her pillow tight and wish she was back in the city, back in the life that was truly hers. By the 4th night, a deep restlessness had completely taken over her. She missed being touched, being held, being looked at with admiration. She missed the constant affection she was so used to getting in the city. She missed the attention from the 2 men who made her feel so alive. She tried to reason with herself, telling herself it wasn't her fault. She was just lonely. She was just bored. She'd be fine as soon as she got back home. But deep down, a craving was starting to grow, a feeling she couldn't possibly explain to anyone. She'd close her eyes and imagine returning to the city, seeing Tade first, feeling his strong arms wrap around her. She remembered the gentle way he smiled whenever he saw her. Then, her thoughts would drift to Emeka, the way he looked at her with such raw, untamed intensity. Those thoughts alone were enough to light a fire inside her. She'd press a pillow to her chest and whisper into the darkness, "Let this Christmas just end already." Every morning, she'd wake up and cross another day off the small calendar she'd brought with her. Her mother noticed her growing impatience and just laughed. "Essay, your body is here, but your mind is already in Benin," she teased. Essay would just smile, trying her best to hide the real truth behind her restlessness. Her father would shake his head and say, "Young girls, always in a rush." Christmas Day was loud and festive, filled with mountains of jollof rice, the crackle of firecrackers, and long family prayers. But Essay was only half there. She went through the motions, but her heart wasn't in it. Her mind, her desires, they were all waiting for the trip back to the city. She knew exactly what she wanted to do the moment she got home, the moment the car parked, the moment she unpacked her bags. She already knew the first place she would go, the first person she would see, the first door she would knock on. And she knew, deep down, that it wouldn't stop with just one person. When the holiday finally ended and they started loading the car to head back home, Isiosa felt a powerful rush of excitement surge through her veins. The closer they got to the city, the faster her heart beat. Her parents just thought she was eager to get back to her normal life, her studies, her friends. But the truth was so much deeper than that. She was eager to return to the two different worlds she had been missing so badly. The two men she had left behind. The two men she truly believed she could manage. She had no idea that the decisions she was about to make, all within the first 24 hours of her return, would end up shaping her destiny in ways she could never, ever have predicted. The day they got back to Benin, the sky was unusually bright. Even the familiar city noise, the hum of traffic and people, sounded like a welcome home song just for her. As her father drove through the gates of their compound, a thrill ran through Isiosa's body. Finally, freedom again. Her parents moved slowly, unloading the luggage, greeting neighbors, complaining about the long and tiring trip. But Isiosa's mind was already miles away. She rushed straight to her room, dropped her bag on the floor, and immediately grabbed her phone. The network signal was back. Messages flooded in. The first one was from Tade. "Hope you're close to the city? I can't wait to see you." And then, one from Emeka. "Baby girl, you done lost don't forget me, Sha." A smile spread across her face. The kind of smile she had missed so much during her days in the village. She took a quick shower, applied some light makeup, and pulled on a fitted top and jeans. She walked out to the living room and told her mother, "Mummy, I'm going to see Ivy." Her mother, too tired from the trip to argue, just nodded. Within 30 minutes, she was standing at Tade's front door. He opened it with a wide, happy grin, pulling her into a warm hug before she could even say a word. "I missed you," he whispered into her hair. "I missed you too," she said back, and she meant it, but not completely. They spent hours just talking, laughing, catching up on everything they'd missed. Tade kept touching her face gently, as if he needed to make sure she was really there, in front of him. He had bought her food, snacks, and even had a small gift for her, a beautiful necklace he'd saved to surprise her with. She felt special. She felt safe. She felt wanted. Everything seemed perfect, except for that ache that was still lingering inside her. That hunger she had been carrying with her since Christmas. That craving the village silence could not satisfy. Even after they shared intimate moments, the feeling didn't go away. In fact, it only grew stronger. Tade was everything good and gentle and kind, but she still felt a familiar emptiness inside. A longing for something rougher, something wilder, something unpredictable. A longing that only one person could satisfy. Emeka. The need was a constant hum beneath her skin. As she lay beside Tade, his arm draped protectively over her, she should have felt content. And a part of her did. But another part, a louder, more insistent part, was already planning her next move. She checked the time on her phone. It was getting late, but not too late. She gently slipped out of Tade's embrace. "I should get going," she said softly. "My parents will be wondering where I am." He looked disappointed but understood. "Okay," he said, kissing her forehead. "Call me when you get home." "Of course." she promised, a promise she had no intention of keeping right away. The moment she stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a fresh wave of energy. The guilt was there, a small whisper in the back of her mind, but the anticipation was louder. She didn't go home. Instead, she ordered a ride and typed in another address, Emika's address. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. This was reckless. This was risky. This was exactly what she wanted. When she got to Emika's place, she didn't even need to knock. He must have seen her ride pull up. The door swung open, and there he was, leaning against the frame with a lazy, knowing smirk on his face. He didn't say, "I missed you." He didn't pull her into a gentle hug. He just looked her up and down, a fire in his eyes that mirrored the one she felt inside. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice a low rumble. He pulled her inside, his grip firm on her arm, and the world of Tade, of gentleness and safety, melted away instantly. With Emika, there was no talking, no catching up. There was just a raw, undeniable chemistry that consumed them both. The excuse. As evening rolled in, she suddenly stood up. "I need to go," she said. Tade looked surprised. "So quick? Stay a little longer, okay?" "I can't," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "I'm meeting an old friend, someone from my secondary school. She just got back to town." It was a lie. Not a blink, not a flinch. Tade didn't suspect a thing. He simply nodded. "Okay, be safe. And please call me when you get home." "I will," she said smoothly. She stepped out of the house, her heart racing, not with guilt, but with excitement. Heading to Emika, the moment she left Tade Street, she hailed a bike and gave the driver Emika's address. She didn't care that her hair was a bit messy or that her makeup had faded. She knew Emika wouldn't mind. As the bike zipped through the streets, she felt that rush again, the thrilling, addictive feeling only Emika brought her. When she reached his area, the dusty street, the loud music from a nearby kiosk, and the aroma of frying akara wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She knocked on his door once. "Who be that?" Emika's voice called from inside. "It's me," she said softly. He opened the door with a half-smile that quickly blossomed into excitement. "Uh-huh. Look who finally remembered me," he teased, pulling her inside. The reunion she had craved. Being with Emika felt like fire to her. Wild, unfiltered, intense. She let all the cravings she had bottled up for weeks spill out freely. Afterwards, she lay on his bed, breathless, her heart racing with a mix of satisfaction and relief. This was what she had been missing, what she couldn't get from Tade. It overwhelmed her and made her forget everything else. Emika looked at her with a smile, brushing her arm lightly. "You day enjoy me too much," he joked. She laughed, playfully hitting him on the shoulder. Before she left, she reached into her bag and handed him some money. "For food," she said. Emika didn't pretend to reject it. He needed it, and she knew. He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Thank you, my girl. No go forget me again, oh." "I won't," she replied. But in her mind, she thought, "I will never leave either of you." The witness. As she left Emika's house, walking down the narrow path, she didn't notice the man standing near a small shop. He had been buying cigarettes when he looked up and saw her. It was Kunnel, Tade's close friend. His eyes widened as he watched her walk away from Emika's building. He knew exactly where she was coming from, exactly what it meant. He pulled out his phone immediately. Tade needed to hear this. And in that moment, the peaceful balance Isiosa thought she could maintain began to shift. The secrets she managed so carefully were starting to leak into daylight, and her life was crossing into a dangerous territory she didn't yet see coming. A dangerous sight. Kunnel stood by the small kiosk, cigarette in hand, frozen in shock as he watched Isiosa walk out of Emika's compound. He knew that street. He knew the people who lived there. And he knew there was only one reason a young lady would be coming out of that particular building at that particular hour. His friend, Tade, was about to be heartbroken. He watched her disappear into the evening crowd before pulling out his phone. His hands shook, not because he was afraid of her, but because he dreaded the pain this truth would bring. He dialed Tade. "Tade, where you day?" Kunnel asked immediately. "Omo, I'm just at home, resting. I saw your missed call earlier." "You day all right?" Kunnel hesitated. He looked at the direction she had gone, then took a deep breath. "Tade, I just see something." "See what?" Tade asked, still relaxed, unaware of the bomb about to drop. Kunnel exhaled slowly. "I just see SA now. She comment from one guy house for 3rd Junction side. That small pink building behind the mechanic shop." Silence. Long, stretching silence. Then Tade laughed weakly, almost nervously. Cunnel, stop that thing. Essay no fit day there. Cunnel's voice turned serious. Tade, I know your girl when I see her. That's definitely her. She was wearing a blue top and black jeans. I even called her name a bit, and she looked back at me. Tade's breath hitched in his throat. You're sure? I'm really sure, man. Another heavy silence hung in the air. Cunnel added, I don't know what she's doing at that guy's place, but there's another dude in that room. It's not a spot for casual visits, just so you know. Tate felt his throat go dry. He whispered, Thanks. I hear you. After ending the call, he sat on the edge of his bed, shaking. His stomach twisted painfully, and his mind raced in circles. But after a few minutes, he stood up, trying to shake it off. No way. She wouldn't do that. SA can't do that to me. He shook his head, desperate to push the thought away. People just want to mess up what we have. He tried to convince himself Cunnel was wrong, that he was overthinking it, that love was stronger than rumors. But deep down, a small crack had formed in his trust, a crack that would only grow wider with time. Isiosa returns home. That night, when Isiosa got home, she was absolutely glowing. Her steps felt light, and her face radiated relaxation. Her mom caught a glimpse of her and smiled knowingly. Your friend must have really missed you. Look at how happy you are. Isiosa forced herself not to flinch. Yes, Ma. Once inside her room, she flopped onto her bed, replaying the day in her mind, the gentle comfort of Tade and the wild intensity of Emeka. Her heart danced. Her body tingled. Her mind felt satisfied. She felt unstoppable. 2 men, 1 heart. 2 lives, 1 girl. Everything under control. Or so she thought. The warning. The next day, Tade called her. His voice was different. Not angry, not accusing, just strange. Essay? Where were you yesterday evening? He asked casually. Her heart skipped a beat. But she recovered quickly. With Ivy, she lied smoothly. Didn't I tell you? Yes, you did. His quiet tone unnerved her for a moment, but she brushed it off. Why? Is everything okay? Yeah. Tade forced a smile through the phone. Everything is fine. But it wasn't. That night, he prayed before sleeping, something he rarely did. Not because he was sure she was cheating, but because he didn't know what to believe anymore. Justifying herself. Meanwhile, Isiosa was blissfully unaware of the crack forming in her relationship. She told herself she deserved love from both men because each fulfilled different needs. Tade is my future, she thought while applying lip gloss, admiring her reflection in the mirror. But Emeka is my happiness. She never considered loyalty. She never feared consequences. She never imagined a world where the truth could come out. In her mind, she was skilled enough to balance everything. Life hadn't yet shown her that secrets are like smoke. You can hide the fire for a while, but the smoke always finds a way out. A brewing storm. In the days that followed, Cunnel watched her quietly. He didn't confront her. He wasn't foolish. Instead, he noticed the pattern. Her sudden excuses. Her late replies. Her disappearing acts. Every sign pointed to trouble. And even though Tade tried to ignore it, the seed of doubt had been planted in his heart. He loved her deeply. He trusted her blindly. And that made the wound even deeper. Isiosa continued living her double life, not realizing that one careless moment had already started a chain reaction that would destroy everything she thought she controlled. The storm was growing. Quietly, patiently, inevitably. And soon, it would break. The mist period. The first sign came quietly. One morning, as Isiosa stood in front of her mirror adjusting her hair, she felt a heaviness in her lower belly. Dull, lingering, unfamiliar. At first, she brushed it off. She figured her monthly cycle was just around the corner. But 2 days passed, then 5, then 7. Still nothing. She tried to stay calm. After all, stress could delay things. Travel could delay things. Even the weather could mess with her cycle. That's what she told herself. But deep down, a cold fear wrapped itself around her heart. Because she knew her cycle was never late, not even by a day. Strange symptoms. Days turned into weeks. Her appetite changed. Mornings came with nausea. Smells she once loved suddenly made her feel sick. One afternoon, while her mom cooked stew in the kitchen, Isiosa dashed to the bathroom and vomited so violently her hands trembled. Her mom knocked on the door. Essay, are you okay? I'm fine, she lied, rinsing her mouth quickly. But she wasn't fine. Not at all. Her mind started doing dangerous calculations. Dates, times, memories. The days she had been with Tade. The same days she had been with Emeka. Her hands shook. Her breath quickened. No, 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 she whispered to herself. It can't be that. 3 days later, she picked up a pregnancy test kit from a little pharmacy far from home, somewhere no one would recognize her. She tucked it away in her bag and rushed home, hoping her mom wouldn't ask any questions. That night, while her parents were off at evening fellowship, SA finally had the chance to take the test. Her palms were sweaty. Her legs felt like jelly. Locking herself in the bathroom, she tore open the packet with shaky fingers and followed the instructions. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 3. When she finally mustered the courage to look, her world came crashing down. 2 bold red lines. Positive. No, no, no. This can't be happening, she whispered, covering her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. God, please not me. She sank to the floor, her back against the cold tiles. Her mind went blank, then raced, then blank again. 1,000 thoughts collided, none making sense. Pregnant, pregnant, pregnant. And the worst part? Whose child? Her heart raced as she stumbled back to her bedroom. She locked the door and sat on her bed, shaking with panic. She replayed the last few months, her visits to Tade, her visits to Emeka. The timing overlapped. The dates matched for both guys. A cold wave washed over her. She wasn't just pregnant. She was pregnant and confused. What would her parents say? What would her mom's church friends think? What would Tade say? What would Emeka say? What would she do? She pressed her hands to her face, tears streaming uncontrollably. By the next morning, she had made up her mind. She would tell Tade. He was the stable one, the responsible one, the guy who could take care of her, the one her parents would approve of, the guy whose future was already mapped out. She convinced herself it made sense. He will handle it, she whispered. He will support me. Telling Emeka didn't even cross her mind. She knew he was struggling. What could he possibly do with a baby? But picking Tade didn't erase one thing. Her conscience. Every time she thought about Emeka, guilt stabbed at her heart. Every memory of their time together brought a wave of shame. But she forced herself not to dwell on it. She had to protect her future. She had to survive this. She had to choose wisely. And Tade was the only choice. When she visited him later that week, her heart raced as she stepped into his house. He greeted her with a warm smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside her. "What's up?" he asked, noticing her shaky hands. "You look tense." She took a deep breath. "Tade, I'm pregnant." His expression froze, shock first, then joy lit up his face. "Pregnant?" he whispered, stepping closer. "You're serious?" "Yes," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He pulled her into a tight embrace, laughing softly into her hair. "SA, you don't know how happy you've made me." She closed her eyes as guilt pierced her heart again. He was happy. He trusted her. He believed completely. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know the doubts. He didn't know the danger behind her silence. A week later, he proposed. On one knee, with a ring he had saved up for, with his heart wide open. And Isiosa said yes, smiling, pretending, hiding a truth that could shatter him completely. From that day on, she kept the secret to herself. She never told Emeka. She never told her parents. She never told anyone. But secrets don't just vanish. They grow. They expand. They follow you everywhere. And Isiosa's secret was growing inside her, literally. Every kick, every swell, every sleepless night reminded her that consequences were on the way, whether she was ready or not. A ring and a promise. The day Tade proposed was one Isiosa would never forget, not because it was the happiest day of her life, but because it felt like the heaviest. He took her to this cozy garden restaurant, all decked out with soft lights and blooming flowers. She thought they were just going for dinner. She never imagined a ring was tucked away in his pocket, wrapped in a little velvet box. Sitting across from him, her heart raced, not from excitement, but from guilt. Lately, she'd been feeling more nauseous, and her clothes were starting to fit differently. She couldn't hide the pregnancy for much longer. But Tate had no clue. He spent the whole evening stealing glances at her, smiling like he'd found his whole world in one person. When the food arrived, he barely touched his plate. His fingers tapped nervously against the table. She sensed something big was coming, but had no idea what. Then he cleared his throat and stood up. Before she could ask what he was doing, he dropped to one knee. SA froze. Her breath caught in her chest. People around them paused, watching. Tade opened the small box and looked up at her with eyes full of sincerity and love she felt she didn't deserve. Isiosa, he said, his voice steady yet emotional. When you told me you were pregnant, I knew God had blessed me. You've given me the greatest gift of my life. I want to build a future with you. I want to take care of you and protect you and our child. Tears filled her eyes, not from joy but from shame. He continued, I love you more than I can explain. So please, will you marry me? A hush fell across the restaurant. Everyone waited. Her heartbeat became a drum in her ears. She was at a crossroads, between truth and survival, honesty and comfort. But she remembered her earlier decision, the one she made the day she saw the two red lines. She chose security. She chose Tade. Yes, she whispered. Tade exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. He slipped the ring onto her trembling finger and hugged her tightly as applause erupted around them. But in the middle of that applause, Isiosa felt a deep coldness spreading inside her chest. She had said yes, but she wasn't free. She was trapped in the consequences of her own choices, planning the future. From that day on, Tade became even more devoted. He started acting like a husband already, caring, attentive, protective. He bought baby items, tiny socks, soft blankets, feeding bottles. He downloaded pregnancy apps and excitedly shared weekly updates with her. Look at this. By now, the baby's heartbeat is strong. He began saving aggressively, talking about renting a bigger apartment, buying a car that would be better for carrying a child, and even setting up a small business for her after she delivered. He was dreaming for two and planning for three. Meanwhile, SA felt her life shifting rapidly, faster than she could process. She should have been happy, but she wasn't, because every time she held the engagement ring, images of Emeka flashed in her mind. His small room, his rough laughter, his warm eyes, his tight hugs, his voice calling her my girl. She pushed those memories away. She told herself she had to stop thinking about him. She convinced herself the baby was probably Tade's anyway. He was the responsible one, the man who could give her child stability. But guilt is stubborn. It doesn't leave just because you're pretending. The secret visits. Even after the engagement, SA did something risky. She kept visiting Emeka. At first, she told herself she was just going to say hi, just to check on him, just to keep the connection she couldn't fully let go of. But feelings aren't switches you can turn off. He didn't know she was engaged. He didn't know she was pregnant. He only knew she had traveled for Christmas and come back acting a little different. When she walked into his room after the engagement, Emeka's face lit up instantly. My Madame Dawn show, he joked, pulling her into a hug. She hugged him back, her heart twisting painfully. They talked. They laughed. They spent time together. And though she tried to stop herself, the bond between them refused to break. She knew it was wrong. She knew she was playing with fire. She knew she was dragging him deeper into a story he didn't understand. Yet she stayed, silently breaking two hearts at once. The growing belly. As the weeks went by, SA's belly slowly began to round out. She wore big shirts and loose dresses when visiting Emeka, pretending it was just fashion. But she knew time was running out. Soon, her body would betray her. Soon, she wouldn't be able to hide anything. Soon, the world she built on lies would collapse. Eventually, she stopped visiting Emeka, only because her belly grew too big to hide. He called her repeatedly, asking why she didn't come anymore. She lied again. I'm busy. I'm helping my mother with something. I'm tired. I'm not feeling fine. He sensed something was off, but he didn't know what. And she wasn't brave enough to tell him. Not yet. Blind love. Tade was totally smitten with her. He'd show up at her place with fruits, vitamins, clothes, and food. Anything to make her feel at home. Her mom really liked him, and even her dad, though quiet, gave him a nod of approval. Everyone thought she had found a great guy, but only she knew the truth. Only she felt the weight of her secret. Only she woke up some nights, shaking and wondering whose child was growing inside her. Her world was balanced on a pile of lies, and we all know lies don't stick around forever. The truth was creeping closer, slowly but surely. And when it showed up, it would shatter everything. The twins arrive. As Isiosa's pregnancy hit its final weeks, the worry inside her grew heavier each day. Her body had changed, her movements slowed, and the weight of her secret pressed against her chest like a heavy stone. Still, she kept smiling, pretending everything was just fine. Tade was over the moon. He fussed over her constantly, waking up early to whip up breakfast, attending every checkup and never letting her lift a finger. He pictured the baby's arrival as the highlight of their love story. He'd even picked out names, decorated the nursery, and bought matching outfits, blissfully unaware that reality had twisted into something he never saw coming. The labor begins. The labor kicked off quietly one humid morning. Isiosa woke up to a sharp, strange pain in her lower abdomen. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just a normal cramp. But the contractions ramped up, growing stronger and more relentless. Her mom, who had been sleeping nearby, rushed to her side, panic flashing in her eyes. Sit down. We're going to the hospital. Like, right now," she shouted, urgency dripping from her voice. Tade, who was at work, got the call and showed up almost instantly, anxiety written all over his handsome face. Isiosa felt a flicker of guilt seeing his worried eyes, the way he held her hand as if she were fragile glass. He didn't know the whole story. He thought she was carrying only his child. A miracle and a shock. Hours slipped by, sweat and tears mixing in the hospital room. Nurses and doctors moved swiftly, their calm voices cutting through the chaos. Isiosa clutched her mom's hand while Tade stood close, whispering words of encouragement. And then, two cries pierced the air. Twins. Two beautiful baby boys. The room filled with the soft, rhythmic sound of new life beginning. But something made Tade pause. Something small yet unmistakable. One baby was fair-skinned, almost looking like him. The other was dark-skinned, darker than both of them. A quiet tension filled the room, unnoticed by Isiosa, who was too exhausted and elated to care. She reached for both babies, tears streaming down her face. "They're perfect," she whispered. Tade smiled faintly, but a seed of doubt took root in his heart, buried under relief and joy. For now, he brushed it aside. Maybe it was just a trick of genetics, he told himself. He hugged Isiosa and kissed her forehead, holding his children. The days after, the first week felt like a surreal dream. Nurses came and went, doctors checked vitals, and the hospital room became a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and exhaustion. Tade was the perfect dad in public, doting, proud, and present. He kept telling everyone, "They're mine. I'll raise them with all my heart." But that doubt lingered like a shadow. He couldn't shake the difference in skin tone, the faint resemblance of one twin to someone he couldn't quite place. Isiosa, on the other hand, felt a mix of relief and panic. She held both babies, whispering prayers that Tade would never discover the truth. She told herself she'd figure it out, that she could twist reality enough to keep this delicate balance. But fate rarely gives you that luxury. A quiet suspicion. Tade's friends started to notice his distracted glances at the babies. Even his dad quietly questioned, "Son, are you sure both belong to you?" Tade laughed it off, trying to brush it aside. He couldn't let anyone think poorly of Isiosa. She had given him joy, a child, and he was determined to believe in the miracle, even if his heart whispered otherwise. Yet, doubt gnawed at him. Each time he looked at the darker twin, he felt a strange pang, a suspicion that refused to leave, whispering that something in his carefully constructed world was off. Isiosa tried to avoid those glances. She smiled whenever he looked at the babies, cradling both as if to shield the truth from his eyes. But 1 week after the birth, that fragile shield was about to break. Doubts and whispers. The house was quiet that evening, the soft hum of the fan mingling with the rhythmic breathing of the twins in their bassinets. Isiosa sat on the couch, carefully cradling both boys, smiling softly at Tade as he fussed over feeding bottles in the kitchen. Everything looked perfect. Everything seemed normal. But Tade's mind refused to be at ease. A seed of doubt. Ever since the twins were born, Tade couldn't shake the differences. He'd been a doting father from day one, yet a small, nagging voice inside him whispered relentlessly. The fair-skinned twin, he was undeniably his. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same soft nose, the same tiny hands. But the darker one, he didn't share any resemblance. His skin was darker, his features subtly different. He looked like someone else entirely, and that realization haunted Tade. He tried to push it aside, telling himself, "It's nothing. Genetics can be strange. Twins are unpredictable." Yet, the more he looked at the darker twin, the more doubt grew. And the more Isiosa smiled while cradling him, the more his heart ached with suspicion. Whispers of concern. Cunnel, his close friend, had been watching Isiosa from the sidelines long before the twins arrived. He remembered the day he saw her leaving Emika's house, and that memory resurfaced during a visit to Tate. "You sure everything's all right with the twins?" Connell asked casually one afternoon, sipping his drink. Tate frowned. "Why wouldn't it be?" Connell shrugged, trying not to alarm him. "Just, differences. Sometimes babies don't always look alike. I just thought I'd ask." Tate forced a laugh, but inside, a cold knot tightened in his stomach. Connell's innocent words had planted another tiny seed of suspicion, unease in the heart. That night, Tate stayed awake long after Isiosa had gone to bed. He watched the twins sleep, gripping the edge of the crib as if holding onto his sanity. He whispered to himself, "One day, I'll know. I just need to be sure." He loved Isiosa fiercely. He had been dreaming of this family for months, planning for it, imagining it. But the doubt had begun to grow like a dark vine, creeping into every thought, every glance, every moment he shared with her. And even though he wanted to trust her, even though he believed in her, that small seed of doubt refused to die. Isiosa felt the shift in the air. She noticed how Tade's gaze lingered on the darker twin, the tension coiling in his shoulders, and how his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Each look sent her heart racing. She knew that the day he'd question her was coming, and it made her stomach churn. She tried to brace herself, rehearsing apologies she wasn't ready to voice, all while a storm brewed quietly inside her. Her secret, held tightly for months, now felt heavier than ever. She had thought she could juggle it all. 2 men, 2 lives, 1 heart. She believed she could control the story. But Tade's love, his unwavering devotion, and growing suspicion were pushing her closer to the edge. Deep down, she knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. In the meantime, the house was eerily quiet. The twins were asleep, and Tade was tucking them in with care, humming soft lullabies. Isiosa forced a smile, trying to match his calm vibe. But they were both walking a tightrope. One wrong word, one slip of emotion, and the fragile balance she had worked so hard to maintain could shatter. Doubt was creeping into Tade's heart, and the shadow of truth was inching closer. No matter how carefully she tiptoed around it, Isiosa knew it was only a matter of time before the world she built on lies came crashing down. The morning felt unusually still. Isiosa sat on the couch, cradling the fair-skinned twin while the darker one slept peacefully in the crib beside her. She could feel the storm brewing. Tate had been distant lately, avoiding her gaze, fidgeting with his hands as if they were shouting his unspoken thoughts. Her heart raced. She had always known this day would come, the moment when her well-kept secret might unravel. But she never thought it would happen so soon. Tate had spent the night tossing and turning. The doubts that had quietly gnawed at him since the twins' birth had morphed into an obsession. Sleep eluded him, food lost its appeal, and the gentle love he once felt for Isiosa was now tangled with fear and suspicion. After hours of silent torment, he made a decision he dreaded but felt he had to make. He would confirm his doubts with a DNA test. He called the clinic he had quietly researched the day before and booked a private appointment for the twins. He didn't tell Isiosa. He wanted to be absolutely sure before confronting her. The test would reveal everything. Isiosa's heart raced as she sensed the reckoning approaching. The next morning, Tate gently took the twins to the clinic, holding each one tenderly while nurses collected the necessary samples. Isiosa stayed home, pretending to rest, blissfully unaware that the final confirmation of her secret was already in motion. Hours later, Tate returned, clutching the results. He sat silently on the edge of the couch, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. Isiosa, sensing something was off, looked at him anxiously. "What's wrong?" she asked softly, trying to mask the panic rising in her chest. Tate's face was pale, his voice low and shaky. "Essay. I have the results." Her stomach dropped. She fought to stay composed. He handed her the envelope, but before she could touch it, he said, "One of them is mine. The other is not." Time froze. Isiosa's mind went blank. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had braced herself for anger, maybe disappointment, but the sheer finality of Tade's words hit her like a thunderbolt. "No, no, that can't be," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Essay," Tate said, his voice breaking slightly. "I wanted to trust you. I wanted to believe everything would be fine. But now, the truth is here. I can't ignore it." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It's not true. I I didn't. Tade cut her off, his tone now firm and resolute. The test doesn't lie. One of our children is not mine. I can't live in a house built on lies. You need to leave. I will take care of my child. But you need to go. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the floor, grabbing his hand desperately. Tade, please. I can explain. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you. I love you both. I didn't know how to tell you. But Tade's expression was unmoving. He looked at her with a mix of sorrow and determination that crushed her spirit. I gave you my heart, he said softly, almost breaking, and you betrayed it. I will love my child. I will provide for both of them if I have to. But you go. Go and tell the other man. Isiosa left that day, her heart shattered, the twins' cries echoing in her mind. She rented a small apartment with the child support Tade would provide. Alone, she held both children close, realizing for the first time the full weight of her actions. She had wanted love, passion, and security. And now, she had nothing but the bitter taste of regret. As she rocked the twins to sleep, she whispered to herself, cheating doesn't pay, it never pays. The path ahead would be tough. She would raise the twins on her own, hiding from the consequences of her choices. But deep down, she understood the truth she had ignored for too long. Every action has a cost. Every secret has a price. And some lies, no matter how carefully kept, will always come to light. The first few weeks in her tiny apartment were the hardest Isiosa had ever faced. The walls were bare, the rooms cramped, and the city outside buzzed with life, reminding her that the world had moved on while she was stuck in her own mess. Yet, she had the twins, one fair-skinned, one dark-skinned, both completely dependent on her. Holding them, she felt a mix of love and fear. Love, because they were her children. Fear, because they were constant reminders of every mistake she had made. A new routine. Every day felt like a non-stop cycle. Feeding, changing diapers, bathing, rocking the twins to sleep, and then doing it all over again. She whipped up simple meals, sometimes even skipping her own food just to make sure the little ones were fed. The child support money from Tade went straight to rent, essentials, and the occasional treat for herself, but it hit her hard how small her world had become. Gone were the nights out, the excitement of seeing Emeka or Tade, and that sweet sense of freedom she once cherished. Now, her life revolved around a tiny apartment and two little lives she had to protect at all costs. But even in her exhaustion, something clicked. She realized her choices had real consequences, and there was no escaping that. The thrill of deception had vanished, replaced by the weight of responsibility, worry, and constant vigilance. Facing the truth, one evening, she looked at the twins, both sound asleep in their cribs. One of them stirred, the darker one reaching out a tiny hand toward her. Isiosa knelt beside him, her heart heavy. "You're mine," she whispered softly. "All of you. Even if I made mistakes, even if I hurt the people I loved. I promise I'll take care of you." Tears streamed down her cheeks. It was a tough realization. The choices she made for love, pleasure, and security had led her here. And now, she was the only one carrying that burden. No Tade, no Emeka, just her, and the two tiny lives that depended on her. Learning to be strong. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Isiosa found her groove. She learned to manage her time, organize her little apartment, and care for both kids without losing herself. She discovered a strength she didn't know she had, a resilience born from necessity. She also knew she had to be careful. No way could she risk anyone discovering the full truth. Tade kept sending money regularly, but she maintained a careful distance. Emeka faded into the background, though memories of him sometimes haunted her, reminding her of the choices she had made. The price of choices. Watching the twins play together, giggling in their adorable little ways, Isiosa whispered to herself, "This is what I get for trying to have it all, for loving without limits. Cheating doesn't pay. And yet, life goes on, even when you mess up." She realized raising the twins alone wasn't just about survival. It was about redemption. She couldn't change the past, but she could shape their future. She could give them love, stability, and care, even if it meant sacrificing her own comfort. In that small apartment, filled with soft cries, gentle laughter, and tiny hands gripping hers, Isiosa finally understood what responsibility meant. She had played with fire and got burned. But now, she was learning to rise from the ashes. Her life would never be the same. Her choices had consequences. But she also understood that even after mistakes, there could still be hope, still be love, still be a chance to do better. For the first time in months, Isiosa allowed herself to breathe fully. The road ahead would be tough, but she was determined to walk it, step by step, with the two little lives that depended on her. The past catches up. Months passed since Isiosa moved into her cozy apartment with the twins. Life had settled into a challenging, exhausting rhythm, but she had adapted. She fed them, bathed them, and watched them grow. Each day brought new challenges, but also a quiet sense of accomplishment. Yet, the past never stays buried. An unexpected knock. It was a humid afternoon when she heard a knock at her door. She was in the kitchen, stirring a small pot of stew, when the sound echoed through the tiny apartment. Who could that be? She muttered to herself, wiping her hands nervously. When she opened the door, she froze. There stood Emeka. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the scene. The two babies, the modest apartment, and the exhausted but determined look on her face. He began, his voice faltering. She stepped back, closing the door slightly. What are you doing here? I heard, he stammered. I heard some things. About the babies. Her heart raced. She had done everything to keep this part of her life hidden from him. Yet now, here he was, seeing the evidence, the tangible proof of her secrets. Confrontation. Emeka stepped closer, his hands slightly raised as if trying to calm the storm. I didn't mean to come like this, he said softly. But I need to know the truth. Isiosa's mind raced. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, she felt paralyzed. Emeka, it's complicated, she whispered, her voice trembling. Complicated? He repeated, pain flashing in his eyes. I thought what we had meant something. She swallowed hard, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It did. It does. But, Tade, he's the one who can provide for them. I couldn't. You couldn't what? He asked sharply. Couldn't tell me? Couldn't trust me? She faltered. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing. Emeka's expression darkened. His voice grew quiet but intense. You were doing the right thing for who? Yourself? A harsh reality. Isiosa lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. She felt cornered, exposed, and utterly guilty. Yes, she admitted softly. I was thinking about survival, about the babies. I didn't want them to go without. I made mistakes, Emeka. I know that. I can't take them back. Emeka stood in silence, anger and disappointment warring with lingering affection. He looked at the twins, who were now gurgling and reaching for her, and his heart ached. You had a choice, he said finally, his voice heavy. And you chose this. And I'm not the one raising them. You didn't trust me. You didn't even tell me. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. I didn't know how. I thought it would be easier if I handled it myself. I didn't want to ruin everything. The fallout. For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft coos of the twins. Then, slowly, Emeka shook his head. I can't be part of this, he said finally, his voice breaking. I can't be part of a life built on lies. But I still care about you. I still care about them. Isiosa's chest tightened. She knew he was speaking the truth. He was devastated, just like Tade had been, but he still loved the children in some way. She nodded slowly, unable to speak. I'll take responsibility for my part, she whispered. I'll raise them. I'll make sure they're cared for. But I can't ask for your forgiveness. Not now. Not ever. Emeka sighed, backing away slightly. I hope you find a way to live with yourself, essay. But you have to know, the past doesn't stay quiet forever. It will always find you. A heavy silence. He left without saying another word, leaving her standing in the doorway, the soft cries of the twins echoing in the empty apartment. Isiosa sank to the floor, holding both babies close. No matter how hard she tried to hide the truth, secrets have a way of surfacing, right? Sure, she had survived. She had adapted. But the fallout from her choices always seemed to catch up with her, whether she was ready for it or not. For the first time in months, she really understood that life wasn't going to let her forget. Hard lessons. The apartment felt quieter than usual. The twins were sleeping peacefully, their tiny chests rising and falling in a perfect rhythm. Isiosa sat in the worn armchair, cradling a bottle of milk and staring at the wall, lost in thought. These past months had been the toughest of her life. She had survived the chaos of her decisions, dealt with the heartbreak of Tade's rejection, and faced Emika's disappointment. Every day felt like a struggle, and every choice weighed heavily on her. Yet, here she was, still holding the two little lives that depended on her completely. Confronting reality. Isiosa had once thought she could have it all: love, excitement, security, and freedom. She chased after pleasure without thinking about the consequences, believing she was clever enough to juggle two worlds. But reality had forced her to face the truth. There were no easy escapes, no shortcuts. Every lie came with a price, and hers had been steep. The love and trust of two men, her parents' potential disappointment, and the burden of raising two kids on her own. She whispered softly to herself, "I thought I could play with fire and not get burned. I was wrong. So wrong." Learning responsibility. In the weeks that followed, Isiosa started to build a more stable life. She learned to budget the child support money from Tade, carefully splitting it to cover rent, food, clothing, and baby supplies. She discovered the immense challenges of motherhood: sleepless nights, endless feedings, and the constant worry of whether she was doing enough. But amidst the exhaustion, she found a strength she never knew she had. She became resourceful, patient, and resilient. Every decision she made, every sacrifice she endured, was for the twins. "You are my responsibility now," she whispered to them one night, holding them close. "And I will not fail you, not like I did before." A bitter understanding. She also began to grasp the deeper lessons from her choices. Love, she realized, couldn't be divided and kept hidden. Trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. And pleasure, no matter how enticing, was always fleeting. Each day reminded her of the consequences she had ignored: Tade's absence, Emika's anger, and the whispers of the past she could no longer control. But she also noticed the small victories: tiny smiles from her babies, the warmth of holding them safely, and the quiet pride in knowing that despite everything, she could care for them. Facing herself. One evening, after putting the twins to sleep, Isiosa looked into a cracked mirror. She didn't see the carefree, reckless girl she used to be. She saw a woman changed by experience, forced to confront the consequences of her actions. "I have to do better," she whispered, tracing the lines of her tired face. "For them. For myself. I can't change the past, but I can shape what comes next." It was a bitter lesson, learned through tears, heartbreak, and sleepless nights. But it was a lesson she would carry forever. The path forward. Isiosa started making plans for the future. She enrolled in a part-time course to improve her skills, hoping to provide more for the twins someday. She looked for stable work that would allow her to care for them while earning a living. She built routines, schedules, and a sense of order in a life that had once felt chaotic. It was hard. It was exhausting. It was lonely. But it was honest. And for the first time in a long while, Isiosa felt a quiet sense of purpose. She had made mistakes, big ones, but she was learning that life, no matter how harsh, demanded growth. She was determined to rise from the wreckage of her choices, even if it meant walking the hard road alone. She whispered softly to herself again, this time with a hint of resolve. Cheating doesn't pay, but hard work, responsibility, and love, they might just save you. Acceptance and hope. The small apartment was quiet again, but this time, it felt different. Not tense, not heavy, but alive in its own steady rhythm. Isiosa sat on the floor, cross-legged, with the twins playing beside her. One rolled over giggling, and the other reached for her hand, their tiny fingers curling around hers instinctively. Isiosa smiled, a slow, genuine smile that held both relief and sorrow. She had come a long way, embracing responsibility. She had learned that life offered no shortcuts. Every choice carried weight, and hers had nearly broken her. But she had survived. She had built a life from the fragments of her mistakes. Watching the twins laugh together, a wave of pride washed over her. They were innocent, unaware of the chaos that had brought them into the world. They were hers to love, protect, and guide. Her heart whispered softly, "I may have stumbled, I may have lied, but I will not fail them. I will do better. I must do better." Letting go of the past, the memories of Tade and Emika still lingered like shadows. She remembered the love, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the DNA test that had shattered everything. She thought of Tade's eyes, full of hurt but resolute, and of Emika, whose disappointment had cut deep. She allowed herself to feel the weight of it, but she also let it go. She couldn't change the past. She couldn't undo the consequences of her actions. All she could do was move forward, one day at a time, with honesty and integrity as her guide. A fragile piece, Isiosa found a rhythm in her life. She balanced work, classes, and caring for the twins. She discovered strength in herself that she hadn't known existed, a resilience born of necessity, love, and survival. In this new life, she felt a fragile peace. Not perfect, not without regret, but real. She whispered to herself as she tucked the twins into bed one night. "You are my world now. Your smiles, your laughter, your little hands, this is what matters. I will not let the mistakes of my past define our future." Hope for the future. Isiosa looked out the small window of her apartment. The city stretched beyond, alive and relentless, much like her own life had been. But now, she faced it with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. She would keep working, learning, and growing. She would raise her children with love, teaching them honesty, compassion, and responsibility, the very lessons she had learned the hard way. And maybe one day, she could forgive herself completely. For now, she whispered softly into the night, "I have lost much, but I have gained more. I have my children, and I have the chance to build a life worthy of them. The past may haunt me, but the future is ours to shape, and I will not waste it." As she closed the window and turned off the light, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. She was no longer the reckless girl who sought love in two hearts. She was a mother, a protector, a survivor. In that moment, Isiosa finally understood. Life's hardest lessons often lead to the strongest growth. She had fallen. She had burned. But now she was rising. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share with friends, and subscribe for more amazing tales.